if you don't, I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm not going to. How old are you?
Yeah, that's fine. 34.
Wow. So young, a book out, a therapist. Like, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, that's what trauma does to you sometimes.
Oh, shit.
You got to grow fast.
All right, let's get it started. We're good. We're good to go. We're good to go. The first thing I always like to do, well, we're going to start it off right? The first thing I always like to do is I like to give thank you to the YouTube subscribers, the TikTokers, the Instagrammers, and the listeners across the world. Thank you so much for allowing me to grow with you and be a part of your lives. Today, we have a special guest. She goes by the name of Kiara Luna. She's a licensed mental health counselor. She's the CEO of New You Psychotherapy and founder of it. Kiara, welcome. Hey. Round of applause for Kiara. Yes. Hey. Listen, before anything, I was impatient. I wanted to have this conversation for a while, and it just so happened that our guy, Live with That 5, connected us, and I was like, yes.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to you, Live. Listen, thank you for being a part of the podcast. Thank you for coming. How are you?
I'm great. I mean, first of all, what you have going on is amazing. I follow you on Instagram. I follow your podcast. And just having a space for fathers to be able to process what they go through is an amazing space. So thank you for also doing the work.
Thank you. Yes. And speaking of doing the work, it's like the reason why I've been wanting to have this conversation previously to the recording we was talking is because I am going to therapy, and you are Latina, you're one of us, and it's like so inspiring to see a young woman, become a helper in the community. But take me back, your upbringing, how did it play a part? Tell me about your upbringing and how did it play a part in you becoming what you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's see. Let's go to so I was born here. Right. I was born in the United States, and at around 6-7 years old, my mother and my father decided to go to the United States, not Dominican Republic.
Right.
So I spent around 6 to 7 years there. So I came back here when I was 13.
Wow.
A lot of my upbringing, my parents were amazing parents when it came to ensuring that I always felt safe with my concrete needs, right? I never had to worry about where I'm going to eat or, shelter or anything like that. I think I also give my mom a lot of credit because regardless of how much suffering she was going through in her relationship with my father, she always had a smile on her face. Wow. She always presented as this resilient, strong woman who, no matter what was going on behind closed doors, she always made sure to show up with a smile on her face. Wow. But that also, impacted me because what that was teaching me is okay, so it's okay to suffer in silence.
Right.
Oh, okay, so it's okay to be in an unhealthy relationship and still stay, So that was kind of giving me a lot of messages about what relationships meant. But instead of it impacting me in the way where I was scared of relationships, it was shaping me in a way where I knew what type of relationship that I wanted.
Wow.
So I started thinking about I will never be with a man who cheats on me.
Right.
Oh, I will never be with a man who speaks to me in that way. I was kind of processing it in that way.
Right.
One thing that I definitely enjoyed a lot was emotional dismissal. So a lot of, I didn't have the space to share how I actually felt because every time I tried to do that, I was met with harshness or my mom dismissing me because she didn't know how to deal with her own emotions, right?
Right.
And when you don't know how to deal with your own emotions, it's really difficult for you to deal with anybody else's emotion, right?
Wow.
So I remember, there was a time that I was telling my mom something that I didn't like she did or something I didn't like how she treated me in that way. And her response was you're a child. You don't fucking tell me what to do, basically.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. So in that same moment, and that's how we know when trauma hits us, right? Because we remember those moments vividly. I remember promising to myself, okay, I will never speak about my emotions again. Because obviously when I do, she gets upset, right?
Yeah.
So it taught me that speaking about my emotions was not safe. And also it taught me, when I speak about my emotions, my mom doesn't love me.
Wow.
And I always want to feel loved, right?
Wow, yeah.
So a lot of those experiences, right, in hindsight now, when I speak about it, I can tell oh, okay, I I always knew how to protect myself because as children, we always know how to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that sometimes we forget as parents is that our children are also trying to survive.
100%.
You know? So how did those experiences shape me into becoming the therapist that I am today, or just even going into that path? I feel like it was very natural because people always used to rely on me for advice. And I was 7 years old. I was 8. I was 9. And I was here giving advice to my sister who was 7 years older than me, to her boyfriends, like talking to them about their relationship issues. And
You're the youngest?
yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
well, I'm the middle child.
Oh, okay. Even more resilient.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my little brother, I have a brother, he's 7 years younger. So my mom had us each 7 years apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
7 is the number.
Yes. Look at that. And you were in 7. Meant to be. So, excuse me. So, yeah. So people always relied on me for advice, always relied on me to kind of like hear them out.
Right.
And as I got older, I realized like, okay, well, I started doing internships and I started doing, you know, actually being in the work field.
Right.
And then I realized like, I really love talking to people and listening to their problems. I actually thrive in that. Like I like it. I find it so interesting. And also just how the brain works and, you know, how you can see one relationship can be very successful when the other one is not, you know, you can see people's ways of being and, but why? Like what happened, right? Like what were some of the things that you went through that caused you to harm people in this way, or that caused you to show up in this relationship in this way? So it just started to open curiosity in me. And I knew that, well, the best way to find this out is through mental health.
Yeah.
And it's through supporting people. And I remember when I did my internship in, what was it that I did it? The Department of Investigation, I did an internship.
Right.
And I remember seeing how we weren't kind of helping people, we were setting them up.
Right.
And I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to set you up. I want to help you before you get to that point.
Yeah.
So that's also what helped me decide, okay, I'm going to go into psychology and let's see where it takes me. But all those experiences absolutely shaped me into wanting to become a therapist. I just didn't know that was a field or something to do because no one around me was a therapist.
That's another thing I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
I was going to ask, did you see a therapist in your family, or someone in your family become a therapist, or did you get inspiration from something like that?
Yeah.
But your experiences, like you said, shaped you. Yeah. You know, it's crazy because we had similar upbringings, and I think this is like overall in a Latino household where it's kind of like our parents were working off, like they were being, I don't want to put a label on it, but it's like dismissive parenting.
Yeah.
Like you just said, like, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you'll deal with it. You know, me being the oldest and the boy in the house, you know, and my father always being on top of me, you're a man, you know, you got to do things a certain way, you know, that upbringing. And a lot of times as kids, like you mentioned, you identify what you don't want to become that your parents are. Yeah. And I also identified certain points of I could pinpoint, I could literally tell you specifically what happened, because those memories are like in there, like they're vivid in your mind. But there's certain things that happen that I was like, okay, that version of you, I'm not going to become. Yeah. That version of you, I'm not going to become. You know, and it's crazy because as a kid, you are learning how to survive as well, and that's something that on the flip side, because you're a parent too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Us as parents, we're overly protective and overly like attentive with our kids, and trying to be not dismissive in our parenting. Yeah, we're trying to, but does it help? Is the question? You know, it's I don't know. It's I battle with that. You know, do I? Because sometimes I look at myself in my parenting. I'm like, you know, what would my parents do? And it worked back then with me, but it was more of a scare tactic.
Exactly. So did it really work?
But did it really work?
Right.
But it also worked in a way. Yeah. And it shapes you up. It's weird. It's weird.
It is, yeah.
It worked, but it's not the right way. It's not the right approach. Yeah. It worked, but maybe I could take that and apply it in a different way without being overly protective.
Yeah, because it worked because you just had the resiliency to overcome and unlearn the way that it probably kind of, how do I say is like it came up for you from a maladaptive way, right? So perhaps like, even though, because for example, I will say like I work with a lot of parents now. I'm you know, at a school. So what I hear them say is like, well, my mom used corporal punishment and I'm still alive. Like, I'm still here. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. And it's true. A lot of our parents use different tactics.
100%.
I was one. A mí me dio un par de galletas, mi pana, growing up.
Había un palo, everything flying off the shelf.
Un ecobazo aquí, un ecobazo allá. I definitely,
Facts.
At the same time, was it the best tactic? No, because now I'm fearful of you. Now
Right.
I don't feel safe with you. Now maybe the things that I brought up to your attention, now I won't do it again because I'm gonna be scared of the repercussions, right? I don't feel safe now with you. And
Right.
the reality is that as we grow older, right, we start to notice these things like, wait, what? Because of corporal punishment, because of how harsh my parents were when I grew up, well, how did that shape me? What are some things that I may not do or do because of that? Well, I may people please now,
Okay.
Well, I may say yes to other people more often than I should,
True.
Maybe now I'm reactive, towards people, or I'm very hypervigilant because I'm already kind of also aware of whether or not you're going to put me down or not, because the people who were there to keep me safe and to protect me were the ones hurting me. So how can I trust the world?
Wow. That's an amazing way to put it. It's so like I said earlier, I am receiving therapy, right? And it's been like almost 2 years now, and I've learned so much about myself during this time. And opening up that curtain and seeing back there and being afraid and getting to the point of not being afraid and approaching the situation differently. I was talking to my therapist 2 days ago in my car. It was raining. I had to take the virtual call, and I told her, what I've learned really in these 2 years of therapy is sometimes you just got to stand still in the storm. It's kind of like the storm will pass at some point. It's the way that you react to it. Now it's kind of like, as I'm receiving therapy, and everybody's different, but it's kind of like you're building up this toolbox.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Of different approaches that you can use with different things, because life is gonna life. And
Always.
and trauma will show up.
Yep.
And it's always gonna be a new thing.
Yeah.
A deeper thing, a thing that you probably can't handle at that moment, but you've been in therapy for 3 years, but still this new thing is kind of like getting to you.
Yes.
But you have different tools that you
Right.
can utilize. And one of them, the most powerful for me, is standing still and
that's
being
good.
still. Because I was very reactive when trauma showed up in my life. Reactive, not in a way that I, let's say harm myself or anything.
Yeah.
It's just that I'll be scared.
Right.
I'll be in fear. What's going to happen, But if I just stand still, the moment will pass. Or even in responding to someone, just stand still in the moment, kind of like understand what's happening before you respond to it. It matters.
It matters so much.
It matters. Yeah. And growing up, like living in again, kudos to our parents.
Yes,
we all
love them.
We
love
them.
you.
Books flying off the shelves,
Yep.
broomsticks and everything and all. We
types
love
of
you.
things.
We love you. But it's also plays in a part of how they grew up.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And
Yep.
you just said it, like, your mom in your household, she guarded you
Yeah.
and protected you from things that you probably weren't able to understand at the moment.
Right.
And even in that guarding, she would put a shield on herself.
Right.
And similar in the household, right? And it's kind of like shows to the resilience that they had to endure and learn throughout their life to kind of like become that person for you.
Yeah, listen, I don't understand. I give kudos too much and so much to our parents, because living through life without acknowledging or being aware of how hurt you may be inside and not having the tools to work through that pain, but still showing up for their children, still showing up for their community, still showing up for their people. Like, that's hard work.
That is.
Doing it with pain, doing it through pain, So even though, like, as upset as I could have been growing up and being a teenager, I am so appreciative today, because I'm like, oh my goodness, like, first of all, what would have I done without you, you know? And at the same time, it's like, how resilient you are, mom, how resilient you are, dad, even, right? Like, that you guys have been able to overcome so much without the gift of knowing that you don't always have to do it in survival. You can also thrive and do this, you know? So not the other day, but months ago, I was watching Joe Dispenza. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he's very through meditation in the work. And we'll talk about the nervous system a lot too, because a lot of our stories also live in our body, right? And not sometimes we get triggered and we don't even know why, right? And it's because a lot of those triggers come through generational trauma. It's in our bodies, so many different things, right? But it's just so beautiful to see that even though our parents didn't have the tools to like support us in the best way, they still did the best they could,
right?
You know, and at times we forget about that when we are when we are triggered or we feel upset about something. But the reality is like, as parents today, we also know how difficult and challenging it could be to raise these little humans and to break the cycle. You know, I mean, I know that my oldest, he's 14 now.
Wow.
He's the one who experienced all of the things, you know, because I was 18 when I had him.
Young mother.
So I was really co-parenting, which I still co-parenting myself. So I'm still parenting myself, but reparenting is the word that I was trying to say. I'm still reparenting myself. Right. But through that, I also had to now parent another person external from me.
Wow. And
having to learn how to do that at such an early age, which I felt really prepared. I felt like God prepared me in so many ways to have a child early. At the same time, though, like, again, like in hindsight, you know how many times I've had to say sorry to this boy? Because I'm like, oh man, like, I'm so sorry that, you know, I spoke to you in that way when, you know, blah, blah, blah. But that is the repair system that we can implement to our children today 100%. To help them not be as traumatized as we were or as we continue to be.
Did you ever receive an apology from your parents?
No. Growing up, absolutely not.
Right. Me neither.
Yeah, no. Which actually translated in me having a difficult time taking accountability in my intimate relationship.
Wow.
It was really hard for me to be like, you know what, I'm sorry, I did that thing. No. It was like, oh, well, I did it and okay.
Wow.
Right. So it was really hard because I didn't have that example. It was never modeled for me. I didn't know what it meant, you know? So as I got older and I continued to work through my own thing is when I started realizing like, oh, wow, like, damn, I was kind of gaslighting you in some way, babe. I'm sorry. Like, wow, I was emotionally manipulative and I didn't even know it. So like all of these little things that sometimes we do and we don't realize that we're doing, but that's just because we're protecting ourselves. Right. We don't want to get hurt. I don't want you to cheat on me. So I'm going to present with this shield. I'm going to present with this. So, you know, we self-sabotage too in so many different ways without knowing because we are not aware of our own maladaptive behaviors and the ways that they are showing up in our relationships with others.
It's crazy because, you know, what we all fail to realize is even our parents, like everybody's parenting for the first time. Yeah. It's not like there's a book that you can pick up before, you know, if you picked up a book before becoming a parent, kudos to you.
Right.
And getting tools and stuff like that, depending on what book you actually picked up. Right.
Yeah.
But not everyone has the wherewithal to say, hey, you know what? Let me look at what parenting looks like before I parent.
Yeah.
Right. Or let me look at what marriage looks like before I get into a marriage. Mm-hmm. You know, let me read into it. Let me study it before that. So it's kind of like we're going on the fly. Right. And, you know, for our parents, you know, dismissive, you know, shielded, protective, survival mode, all of those things is just, and I feel bad because now that I am understanding the language of therapy, that survival mode that they were in is just creating more trauma for them. Yeah. So, you know, I asked my dad the other day, and I love him. I said, you know, I'm going through it. It's perfectly fine. I'm going through it now as a parent. During this age of my daughter's life, because I'm a girl dad. One is 11 and one is about to be 9, right? I'm a mush, right? But I'm going through these things. What was going through your mind when these things was happening for you? Because you had me and my sister only. And, you know, how do you deal with the trauma of it? He's like, no, I just worked. And it's that survival mode. Yeah. And he's in his 60s now, and I feel horrible for him because you can't change him at this point. Yeah. When I started to, I was afraid to let him know that I was going to therapy because as soon as he he went to the VA with me one day, and I went to this different building, and I was trying to enroll into therapy, and he's like, "Are you okay? What are you?" I even told him to stay in the car, because I was afraid of his judgment.
Yeah,
and it's weird because I know his mentality.
Yep.
So I went in there. I got the appointment. I got set up right for therapy. Finally, I started accepting therapy at that point in my life, right?
Yeah.
And when I decided to tell him on the way back home, and he was like, "Are you okay? Are you crazy? Or what's going on?"
Yeah,
And I took it for what it was. I didn't take it in an offensive way. I just know that I would hope that he could heal at some point that version of himself that was so guarded.
Yeah.
And it's very like, the more guarded you become, the more you live in survival mode, the harder it is to get out of it.
Yes.
And it's I just feel bad.
Yeah, that's what I think I was going to mention that a few months ago, watching the Joe Dispenza movie that he came out with, it just brought me so much peace because of the meditation part of it and everything, just like the beautiful healing that happens when you meditate. Like our own bodies heal ourselves if we tune in with the body, if we stay still, right? And it just hit me like, OMG, like our parents are never going to do this work. Like at least for me, like I just felt the pain of like, my mom would never like sit down and like go to therapy or like do the work, like she would never. And it just hit me and I just started crying. My husband's like, what is going on? Where are you? And I'm like, no, it's just that it's so like, it makes me so sad.
It's sad.
And at the same time, so much more accepting, right? Like I accept you as who you are. Like I understand, I know how to navigate it. I know better. Right. So I handle it best, right? So because I handle it best, then it is my responsibility, or because I have more awareness, it is my responsibility to navigate it, right? I'm not going to put the responsibility on you anymore. Right. Now, I have my own boundaries. I know how to work with you and how to navigate any situation that may make me feel uncomfortable or that I may be triggered in. Right. So like now when I'm triggered, if I'm with my mother, because, little Kiara still in here, So if I'm triggered around her, I'll remove myself, or I will tell her like, hey, I really didn't like that. Like, please do not say that to me again. Or my mom has the tendency, and this one's like a real one for me. I don't know what. Well, let's walk it through. I think I know
we are
what
speaking
it is.
to the masses. You're speaking to me directly right now. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm with my mom. This was actually like 2 weekends ago on Mother's Day. Look at that. Okay. On Mother's Day, I'm with her, and so we're with the kids in the car. We're getting ready because we're going somewhere, and my 9-year-old, he's just walling out in the back, like walling out. So I turn around. I'm like, hey, Kyler, like please stand. And like her automatic thing to say to me was like, don't hit him. And oh my God, that made me so upset.
Listen.
That made me so, because one thing that I really don't tell me what you did to me. Like I don't hit my kids. So in that moment, I was reactive. Like in that moment, I was reactive. I couldn't like because I'm dealing with this and then you like like it's just so much. So in that moment, I tell her really assertively, do not tell me how to raise my children. Yeah. But I do that in front of them. But it's in Spanish, so they don't really speak Spanish. So it's fine. Look at me. It's
they don't
fine.
understand.
But I'm sure that like the energy was felt though. Like
to her,
the car was quiet.
Right.
And then it just it wasn't enough for me. So then I go and sit down. I sit back down, and then I turn around and I calm down. But then I say, hey, don't ever tell me not to hit my kids again, because I do not hit my kids. I know where you're coming from. I know you're trying to protect them. I know your grandma. But please don't do that again, because I don't do that. Yeah. And then, we had a great day after that. Yeah. But I couldn't stay with the belief that you're projecting onto me, because that's not how I parent my children. Maybe at some point at the beginning with Caden, because I was 18, I was just repeating the same things right? Until one day my son, my 14-year-old, told me, he was little, but Caden has always been like so wise too. Yeah. He tells me, if you love me, why you hit me? And I was like, oh my God.
Mush it out.
Let me think about it. But I truly had, like, even though he was maybe like, what, 7, 8, I truly had a conversation with him and explaining, you know what, you're right. Like, why would I? It's my own thing,
right.
And I promise you that would never happen again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry if I've hurt you. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like I didn't love you. We had like a real conversation,
right.
And there's a lot of things that we say we're not going to do, right? When we have our kids, but we repeat because if it's not, it's in our bodies too. It's in our nervous system, right?
It's there.
So like the yelling, I was like, I would never. Oh my God, because my mom, she was a yeller. She was a screamer, this woman. Yeah. And I would say like, I would never. And then one day I asked my son. At that time I only had Caden, yeah. And I asked him, hey, like if you had to change something about me, what would it be? He's like, can I really say it? And I'm like, no, yes. Like, tell me. I really want to know. I want to be a better mom. And he tells me, you scream a lot. I was like, oh my God. And I promised myself that that's not something I was going to repeat. So I told him that. I told him the same thing. Like, hey, you know what? Like, that's funny you tell me that because that's the same thing that my mom used to do to me and that I used to say that I would never do when parenting. So I promise you I'm going to work on that. And I worked on that.
It's, wow. I'm telling you, it's similar household. Like my father was the screamer. My mom was the gentle parent. It's, and I'm glad I had a balance like that because it'd have been worse if both of them were on the same page. On the screaming side, it would have been insane. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, had they both been screamers, I think I would have came out more resilient or, more like understanding of what I didn't want to become. Because very early on, and I remember that, and I don't know why that memory sticks to me, I actually told my dad, these things that you're doing, I'm not doing ever. And not as a parent, but to other people.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it was a tough conversation. And I believe I was like 12. And looking back, I'm like, at 12, I had that spiritual discernment to tell my dad off like that. That's crazy. Yeah. Right? That's like my oldest is about to be 12, and I can never like imagine her having this type of serious conversation with me at that point. Yeah. So it's God.
Yeah, it's God.
Right? It's God shaping you and molding you to become a better person at that point. Because as I previously mentioned, our parents was parenting for the first time, and they had and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, they had the pressures of coming to this country, not learning the language. So they were on go from the jump. They didn't have time for anything, let alone therapy. Yep. Right? They had to learn English, which is still kind of like machucao. So it's like, it was tough on them to begin with. And, I just give grace at this point. I give grace, and it's like, I understand. But when those things come up, when like you had that experience with your mom and you had to kind of like put your boundaries up, I make sure that my boundaries are up as well. And I don't hit my kids at all. I don't do that because I, as a child, know that I would have wanted that conversation instead of that ass whooping. Yep. You see what I'm saying? So let's change the patterns here.
Yeah, it's so important because the reality is our children are just looking to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel heard. All of the things that we as adults also look for. Because my famous line is, we're little kids in grown-up bodies. Yep. So the same things that our children need right now from us are the same things that we also need. Right. That's why it's so difficult when we are in an intimate relationship and the communication is just not working. Right? We can be best friends, but when it comes to having a difficult discussion, we just seem to not get it right. And that's because we also weren't really taught on how to listen to people. Yeah. And our families, we are you Dominican too?
Yeah, 100%.
Dominicans, like.
Well, let me clarify.
Oh, he's gonna clear the air up.
Let me clear the air, right? Because I said this in Live with That 5. Shout out to Live. Listen, I was born in Puerto Rico, right? Because my mom got the paperwork done when she was like 7 months. Okay. So she had me. I became a citizen and took me right back to Dominican Republic. I've never seen Puerto Rico. So to me, my parents, my whole family's Dominican. Okay. I claim Dominican Republic because I've never seen Puerto Rico. Shout out to Puerto Rico. Nothing against you.
Yeah, we love you, Puerto Rico.
We love you. You're cousins, whatever. It's perfectly fine. But I consider myself Dominican.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. No, that makes
I'm
sense.
sorry, I took it up. I had to just clarify, but go ahead.
I like clearing the air. No, that's good. ¿Pero qué yo estaba diciendo?
I have no. He's like, and you know, it was something about like, you know, are you Dominican? And then we took a left, but before that, you were saying.
Oh yes, the toxicity. So I think that the point that I was trying to make. Oh yeah, the listening part is that you know, in our household, everybody just spoke at each other. Everybody was just talking at each other. No one was ever really listening.
Yep.
You know, because what listening looks like is, I'm going to just be here like in tune with you and trying to understand your point and your perspective. And if I'm, you know, if I feel the minute that I feel like we're not on the same page, well, that's my opportunity to then get to understand your page. Clarify. So I can get on it, right? And that's only through communication, through me asking questions, through me empathizing with you, ensuring that even though I may not agree with you, I can see your point. You know, because I know who you are as a person, or I may understand that event and how you saw it that way, even though I may not agree with it. And that's where the validation comes in. And a lot of, you know, I shout out to also the couples and the individuals who are doing the work, who are preparing, who come to therapy just to learn how, okay, we want to get married, but like, what are the things that we should be aware of? You know, okay, we want to have children. Okay, what are the parenting things that I should also be aware of? Like, shout out to those people who do that, because again, they don't come with a manual, like you said.
It doesn't.
But what it comes with is with the opportunity for us to heal, because our children are also a mirror of who we are.
100%. Listen, you said something just now that struck a nerve with me, because in communication, like a lot of us, even let's say our age group, you know, my wife and I, right? We've been together for 16 years. I know her parents very well. I love them. She loves my parents. But there are times where we see our parents in us, and we identify, hey, you're mirroring how you was brought up.
Yep.
Oh, she'll tell me the same thing immediately. Hey, you sound like your dad. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So we want to step away from that. We want to be different for each other.
Yes.
We want to be different for our kids, which means a better future moving forward. Absolutely. So we're grateful for how we was brought up, tough skin, all that stuff, and survival mode. Pero let's be gentler parents. Let's be gentle with each other.
Yeah.
Because even though our parents are still together, all four of them, it's still a toxic dynamic. Yeah. So you're just together to be together at this point. Right. Right. So it's weird.
It's weird and it's tough, right? And weird for us, this generation who's doing the work. Yeah. You know, I think that it would have been, it was normal to us to a certain extent, to a certain point in our lives. And there was something that happened that was like, this is not, I don't feel good with this. I don't like this feeling. I'm out of alignment. I don't like how my life is right now. Something happened that kind of give us that awareness. And I don't know why I'm so curious, but what gave you that awareness? Like, what, and you don't have to share what happened or whatever you're comfortable with, but what gave you that awareness to say, like, I need more support, so someone else that can see the things that I'm not seeing to support me?
You know what's crazy? So I went to the military at a young age, and in the military, it's kind of like tunnel vision, war setting. Your mind is super occupied, right? You don't have a moment for yourself from the day you start. I literally could say that because I experienced it, right? So, and it was after 9/11, so everything was heightened, training, everything was kind of like a war mode. Yeah. But what tends to happen is, and see, I joined the military at 18. I'm 42 now. And now is that I'm identifying what really happened to me back then. Yeah. So this is after the childhood, being raised the way I was raised, right, you know, and then diving into the military, which is another trauma in itself, right? Yep. So after the military, I found myself just spacing out. Like I would be like numb. I would just be like, where, like, not that I didn't know where I was, but it was like I was like feeling hopeless in a way. Yeah. And I didn't know where that came from. Like I let's say I would work in Manhattan and I would be walking to work and I'll just burst out crying. Didn't understand where it was coming from. Still in my early 30s, nowhere near therapy yet, right? But it was closer to my 40s that I started to like realize, and this is while I'm married already. Yeah. Because I'm already married a couple of years in. Yeah. I have 9 years married with my wife, so it's like I'm still not in grips of what's happening to me. And one day I just said, it was a lot. One day I can't even pinpoint what really happened, but it was like I need something to change because I don't feel okay.
Yeah.
These traumas, these different traumas keep popping up in my life, and I want to understand why. I didn't know that the VA offered therapy, so I started looking that up. I started looking at therapy, as instead of looking at it as for crazy people, like I was taught to think about it.
Right.
I started looking at it as, maybe it'll help.
Yes.
Let me go. But the thing with that was, I got in contact with like 4 therapists, and there was like no connection. So it wasn't until the one that I have now that really like kind of like opened up the
Pandora box,
right? The Pandora's box, right? Because you got to click with your therapist.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta make sure that instant like click is there, and then once that's there, then you start diving in. Slowly.
Yeah.
Right. Pero it's been like eye opening like crazy for me, and it's helped me so much that now I'm pinpointing childhood traumas that affected me in ways.
Yes.
Now I'm pinpointing military traumas that are still affecting me today. So, and now I'm it's like it opened the Pandora's box so wide that I'm like, now I'm curious to like figure out more shit.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at other people and giving more grace.
Yes.
So now it's like, oh, you're not really, for example, you're not really angry at the world. You're just dealing with shit.
Yes.
And maybe I could recommend someone to you at this point that you could speak to, or recommend the idea of it, because even a lot of us in our age group, a lot of us are not going to therapy. Right. And I also am curious to see, where was the turning point for me? It started when I became a parent as well.
Yeah.
Because now I'm responsible for this little child, and I was like, oh no, things have to change. And even though I did not realize it at that moment that I needed therapy, I started to change as a person. Like, I'm taking care of someone. I don't want her to experience what I experienced.
Right.
So even that legwork led me into therapy 9 years later.
Beautiful.
So, but now I'm in the work.
Yeah.
So now I don't want to get out.
Yeah.
Now I'm in there.
Yeah.
And I'm diving in, and it's helping me out.
Yes.
And it's, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I'm building up my toolbox.
Absolutely. And I think that it's so beautiful to know the work and do the work. And I think that people feel sometimes that just going to therapy is doing the work. And that is something that has to be clarified, because I always tell my clients, tell them during the consultation call, but also remind them during our sessions, 80% of the work is done outside of here.
Yep.
This is only 20%. Yep. We're here to provide you the tools, to give you the guide. But if you don't implement it outside of this space, you're doing this for nothing.
Yeah.
And it's so important for people to realize that, because a lot of people do use therapy as a way. It kind of has become this cultural thing. Like, oh, I go to therapy. Oh, I do therapy. Oh, therapy. Oh, do you? Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, girl, but how come? What's going on? How are you doing the work? Like, after you go to therapy session, what do you do after with that information? Because sometimes, and my clients be honest with me because I'm honest with them, right. And I tell them, hey, like, I can tell who does the work, just not do the work. Right. I could tell, because when you're telling me there's no progress, then I know that you're not doing the work, and they're honest with it too. So also it's like, okay, meeting people where they're at, of course, as a therapist, some people are not ready yet to do the work or what that may look like. And some people just get in their own way. So it's also finding out, okay, why are we self-sabotaging with doing the work? What is it that we're afraid of? And sometimes people are just afraid of the change, of the people that they may leave behind. Because now if I become more emotionally intelligent, if I become more aware, well, the people that are in my circle are not doing what I'm doing. So that means that I'm going to have to grieve leaving them. And it's that's where we're at. That is part of the work. That
definitely, you got to step out of your circle. And it's not to say that they're horrible people, whatever, or they're going through. It's just that you're becoming a different person.
Yeah.
So in that, you start to focus more on yourself. And it's, I would hope for everyone to have some friends that allow them to step away and grow.
Yeah.
Just like everybody in life has to separate and grow.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own journeys, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we'll connect when we connect, and
Right.
it's perfectly fine. But the conversations will definitely be different.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can step away and you can come back. Because the thing is that people feel like, well, I'm putting myself in the same situation, so I'm getting triggered. Yeah, well, that's like what you're telling your nervous system is like, okay, we're not safe. We're safe here. We're not safe again. We're safe here. We're not safe again. So we're kind of doing this back and forth that it's not allowing us to actually embody that new version of us, that skill, that internal peace, because we're always disturbing it in whatever environment or circle we're putting ourselves back in.
Right.
So sometimes it's okay to step away for a couple of months and then and be honest with them. Like, look, I'm working on this. This is what I want for my life. I want to see it differently.
Yeah.
No judgment to you guys. This is how I
Love
want
you
to
guys.
live right now. I love you. Take a break. I'll be back. Right.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you'll be back, and you'll be back with the tolerance to actually be able to navigate that situation better now.
100%.
Because now you have embodied those tools. You have embodied those skills.
Right. And then, another thing that was brought up earlier when you said it, not everyone is ready for therapy, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm not saying that therapy, it immediately like gave me a light and all that stuff. And it's kind of like it opened my eyes. No, it took some time.
Absolutely.
Because the first thing was digging into like what was really happening that I didn't even identify yet.
Yeah.
And then once it's kind of like it all clicked one time. And it's just by me speaking about it to a professional. Because that's the other thing. Like we could talk amongst our friends and our families who are also probably going through their own traumas and not in the therapeutic setting and all that stuff. So it's like we're just bouncing off traumas off each other.
Yeah.
And that's life. That's normal.
Yeah. And then we trauma bond like that.
Trauma bond and everybody's okay. Everybody's safe. So nobody's really hurting nobody. So everybody thinks it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's really not. Like once you start to do the work and, and let's say your friends start to do the work as well, it'll become a more meaningful relationship at that point. But unfortunately, that's not the way life works.
Not all the time.
Everybody has their own path.
Yeah, not all the time. And there are times that you can, continue to be in your circle and just, you learn the skills to be able to navigate it. You learn your boundaries. You know what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, right? And that allows you perhaps to stay in your circle. And you can also be the example, right? Like the model, right? Like they will now see, oh, okay, oh shit, look at Geraldo. Like that reaction was different.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was a different response.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna be like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and shit, it's helped me become more forgiving too. Like grace is the main theme here. Grace is the main theme for me. Let me ask you, you're a childhood trauma expert. What do you see? Because here's the flip, right? And there's a spider there, but never mind.
Our friend.
What do you see in kids today? Two-part question, right? 2-point question. Because our kids are receiving different parenting than us because we've realized that things need to change, right? But what is the main thing that you see today in these kids that is kind of like a main hindrance in children's trauma?
That's a good question. I'll start with the parenting because I think that because we've been through so much with our own parents, we wanted to be so different and we wanted to have such a different approach, which some of us have been successful with, some of us have not, right? And how can we determine that? Well, that is for you as a parent to kind of determine depending on the relationship you have with that child, right? Okay. It all goes back to, okay, how much does my child trust me, right? Not only to meet their concrete needs, but also their emotional, psychological, and mental needs, right?
Right.
So what I would say that one of the things that we are probably doing a little bit too much of is being a little, I think that we've taken the word gentle too literal. And because we're being so gentle, we're not setting boundaries. So in some ways our children are, because again, like children are children. They're going to test their limits. We as adults test the limits.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and that's also how children get to know what is okay and what it's not okay. Okay. Right. Like if my parent is okay with me getting home today at 2 a.m. and they didn't say anything, well, maybe next time I'll do 3 a.m. I'll do 4 a.m. Right. So, and then the way that we may approach that maybe with like, okay, but you cannot do that. Just come in, and there are no consequences to this. gentle parenting doesn't mean that we're just going to let the kid do whatever they want to do. And I think that in some ways, in some instances, some parents have taken it as such. Like, oh, I want to just make sure that they have everything that I didn't have. Right.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
And it's so like, they still need to have boundaries, or, oh my God, never argue in front of your children. Well, I think that's unrealistic because at the end of the day, your children have to be prepared for the real world. And also another thing that I'm seeing a lot that is a detriment to our children is you help them a little bit too much. Now they're too dependent on you, you know, like whether that is finances, whether that is home, whatever that may be. It's like, how are you ensuring that you are building someone to be able to live without you? And I think that in many instances, we are raising our children to be too dependent on us. And it's like, well, how are they supposed to then know the world and know that and survive or thrive without us being here?
Wow. You know, you hit a point there because I didn't realize it till you said it. Like, we have to prepare our kids to live without us. Yeah. Right. So, but what we're doing in a sense is we're just preparing them to live with us forever.
Yeah. And be dependent, right?
Or be dependent on us forever. So it's strange because I'm big on, you know, making sure that they're prepared before they step out.
Right.
But that gentle parenting stuff it is a constant thing in the house. I like to think of myself as a strong, gentle parent, but I add the word strong because I have my boundaries. Yeah, you're not going to cross these boundaries. There's going to be some consequences.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean we're going to take it back to the 80s or 90s when we used to get our beatings and stuff like that. But this is going to look different.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a consequence.
Yeah.
Because you need to know these things.
Absolutely.
Because you're out of here.
Absolutely.
We couldn't wait to leave the house.
Listen, 18, I went away 17. To college. I went away to college, what 16, 17?
Because you wanted 18. To get away.
I wanted to leave that. Yeah, I wanted to. It was a toxic environment, so I didn't want to be there. So I was like, Mom, by the way, I'm going to go dorm. So just letting you know, giving you the heads up. And of course, she was like, no, you're not dorming. What are you talking about? I was like, oh, I am. I already did everything. I took the loans out on everything. Yeah. And, you know, my father was there during the conversation. And my dad looked at her like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, you got to, you know, let her go. Yeah. Right. You got to let her go.
Even us as parents, what are we going to do when it comes to that time frame?
Oh, my goodness. I think about it all the time now that I have a 14-year-old boy.
And listen, 4 years go by like this. Yes. And by the time you know, he's out of here. Yes. And that's the thing. We think we're going to have these kids forever and we're not.
And we won't. And, you know, it's so important for us to also be, again, as parents, we're not perfect.
Nobody is.
Right? And I'm very, very big on you being aware about my state of mind right now. Right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm upset and I'm not going to be kind to you, I'm going to tell you that. Yeah. You know, the other day, my 14-year-old, I was upset with him. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, hey, just so you know, you're not going to get the understanding, validating, empathetic mom right now. You're getting the pissed off version of me right now. So sit tight. Right? So you just have to let them know, because if I know what to expect, I can prepare myself. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to hear it today. Right? Yeah. I allow you to prepare yourself. And then afterwards, you know, if I know that if I feel or you tell me that I hurt your feelings in any way, I'm going to take accountability for that. Right? And I'm going to ensure that. But the reality is that, again, because I'm being so intentional about my expression to you and what I'm saying, even though it's coming out aggressively or like very assertive, I'm not hurting your feelings. You know, I'm not beating you down.
You're creating a different type of fear. And that's the thing. Like, I read this somewhere, like, you know, for us to have these kids not fear us is a detriment, right? But I think fear is too strong of a word, because fear is tied into, like, you know, in our generation, growing up, fear was different, right, for us. But there has to be some level of respect.
There we go.
That you should have for your parents. Yes. That when I'm not around, you can tell your friends or your cousins or whatever, nah, my mom wouldn't. Yep. She's not gonna let me fly with that one, or my dad's not gonna let it fly.
Absolutely.
And instead of being that kid that's out here wilding, because super gentle parents and they're letting their kids just be out here, and now their kids are ransacking the world,
whatever they want, really.
And I had that conversation with my daughter the other day in the car. Like, she's 11, but she's like very like, like intentional in understanding things, but she's also a kid. So,
yeah, of course.
but I see little sparks here and there of her really capturing what I'm telling her. And I told her, like, you're not going to be like one of these kids that is just out here. And I set an example, like if we go to a Primark, to any store, and I'm here like just letting you take things and put it in your pocket and walk out, I'm doing the wrong thing as a parent. I'm allowing you to do something bad. No, but I know that. I know I'm not supposed to be. I know right from wrong. Like she gets it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, and that also was injected from us to you. So this is us molding you to become a better person all around.
Absolutely.
But you're not just going to do things the way you want them and not expect any consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. My son came home on Wednesday and he's like, I always check in with him after he comes home from school. So I'm like, hey, how was your day? What was good about your day? All of the things, what happened today? And he goes, yeah, so this girl... Oh, girls. This girl, she was extra nice and all of these things. And then she asked me to cut class with her and go to, whatever place. It always happens. I know. And I'm like, oh, okay. What did you do? What did you choose to do? And he's like, no, well, I told her that, I wasn't going to do that. And if she wanted to, she could come to class with me. And I was like, okay, and what did she choose to do? And he said, yeah, well, she chose to go to the class with me. And I was like, wait, and the teacher didn't know? It was a sub, so no, they didn't know. Oh, okay. But I give that example because if I didn't have that relationship with him, he would have never felt safe to tell me that. 100%. Right? Like he would, because I would, typically, if I would have told that to my mom would have been, don't be friends with that person. Oh my God, she's horrible. And just like judge and criticize that other girl.
Yeah.
I don't judge. I don't criticize. I only make you aware.
Yeah.
That's my job as a parent with him. It's like, hey, just a heads up, what are your thoughts about this girl? That, like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it seems like she doesn't have, consequences at home or whatever. And I'm like, okay, and what do you think about what that future can look like? Right? Because you're setting your future right now, Caden. Like, you are responsible for your future. No one else is. I'm here to guide you, give you the tools, support you. But I can no longer, I cannot be the one telling you what to do.
Right.
Hold
on one second. What happened? Okay. Yeah, kill it.
No.
Where is it?
Vamos a correrla. Where is it?
It's right on the cable.
Yeah, we had a little moment. It's all good.
No, of course.
Where were we?
Well, we were with Caden and basically parenting, right? Like,
right.
I think that so much as parents, we want to control so much. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of us in some ways have felt powerless or have felt, out of control.
Right.
And well, when we have kids, we get to control a little bit.
Yep.
It's like a power trip, when
it definitely is.
It's a power trip. And I really needed to, like, again, it's the work that helps us kind of realize those things. Like, oh, wow, this is not because he's unsafe. This is because I'm being triggered and I want to control the situation in whatever way I want to control it. You know?
I think that a lot of times we didn't go to our parents with stuff like that because the communication wasn't there.
Yeah.
Your son came up to you, and my daughter, I'm sure, will come up to us because she comes up to me talking to me about different things that I'm like, oh, you're talking to me about that? Your dad? But I'm also proud of myself because I've opened up the communication levels with her so well that she feels safe and comfortable to have these conversations, which in return will, I wouldn't say stop her from doing anything, but she's aware of what could happen and she has her options. Because one thing that I became an uncle before I became a father. My niece is 17 this summer. I always used to tell her very young, before me becoming a parent, it's kind of like me practicing becoming a parent, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I love my niece, but I always used to tell her, listen, you got option A and option B. If you do this, this is what will happen. If you do that, this is what will happen. Mm-hmm. Like, to the point where my niece now, she opens up to me and we talk, we're best friends in a sense.
Yeah.
But that helped me become a parent. Mm-hmm. And in my parenting, I had to learn how to kind of like woosah and calm down, but open up those communication lines. And, kudos to you because you've opened up those lines. Yeah. And that's why your son will come to you and he'll probably be less in harm's way because he knows
Absolutely.
which option he'll kind of like go towards.
Yeah,
It's weird.
absolutely. And kudos to his dad too, like my husband. Like
Yeah.
he is such an amazing father, such an amazing man. And I tell him this all the time, but just also having someone there with me that supports and that, you know, when he has to tap in, he taps in, because I'm also aware when I just don't have the patience.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if I don't have the patience, I'm like, yo, babe,
Yeah.
this one's on you, boy.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I got it. So also, you know, I'm a great mom because I have a great husband who's a great father.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And
teamwork.
one of the things that we fail to do often is congratulate our fathers for showing up. And I think that people are like, oh, well, but that's expected. Well, yes, it is expected, but it's not something that has been happening through our generations,
100%.
through multiple generations back.
Yeah.
So when you are deciding to show up, to heal, to do differently, to be a better man, not only for the people around you, for your relationship, but also for your children,
Your children specifically.
it just goes a long way, you know?
Yeah.
And I just wish that people would like pause and take time to just like look into their children's eyes
Oh yeah.
and just realize like, okay, you know what? It is my responsibility to break the cycle. It is my responsibility to stop it here, because if I don't, I'm being selfish and I am saying, well, boy, that's going to be your job then.
It all ties in because I don't know who, I think it was you, Natalie, I was having this conversation with. Like a lot of men, and I'm gonna put the emphasis on men, and fathers, right? Because a lot of men feel that, oh, I didn't have a father, so why should I be one? Right? So it's like, no, you know, that's all trauma based too.
Yeah.
It's like, so, you know, you're trying to force your grievances, your pain
Yeah.
onto your kids like that.
right.
And some men really choose to step away from their kids.
Yeah.
Because co-parenting is a thing. You could be a beautiful co-parent.
Yep.
It could be a
Yep.
beautiful co-parenting situation.
Yep.
You don't have to be with that other person. If that didn't work, God put this child in your life
Exactly.
for you to be responsible
Yep.
for it. Because that child is going to grow up.
Yeah.
He's going to become an adult and he's going to have questions. And you're going to have to answer all of those questions if you're man enough at that point.
Absolutely.
So I look at my father, always been there. Good and bad, ugly, all that stuff, but he was always present.
Yeah.
So I took all the jewels that I took in,
Yes.
put some aside. But one thing I could say about my dad, he was always present. So even that, right? Even just
The
his
presence.
presence,
Yeah.
just alone,
Yeah.
doesn't allow me to do that to my kids.
Yeah.
But then I'm adding some sauce to my kids' upbringing because we're gonna do something different. here.
Yes. You're going to have a different dynamic.
We're gonna have a different dynamic, a different relationship. The relationship I have with my daughter, I never really had with my father. So there's that as a plus. No shade to my dad. Thank you for everything that you've put in me, in my heart, and me growing up, and you know all that stuff. But we're gonna take that a step further here,
Absolutely.
and that's what true like parenting looks like. You got to be there for your kids and show up for you. And you, like you said, you know, having a partner is super important because kudos to my wife too. She's definitely an amazing mother. And we could tell when on the parenting scale, I'm on 20% and she's on 100 or, you know, or she's on 10% and I'm on that.
Yes.
We'll look at each other. We say, you take this one, you take this one because I'm not there.
Right.
Certain things happen in the day, you know, life is life. And so, you know, you want to make sure that that parenting dynamic is always there because your kids, it's weird because we talked about shielding
Yeah.
with our parents and us,
Right.
but I would use shielding here as a term as well, where we're not trying to let them see when we're off as parents.
I see.
We want to make sure what they see is consistency.
Yeah.
And, you know, as parents.
Yeah.
And in the
Absolutely.
parenting dynamic, so then
Yeah.
we could go through our day. Question for you, it might be a left turn here. Do you believe that personalities play a part in how people receive therapy?
Personalities in terms
So,
of,
for example,
yeah.
a person who's condescending, because, and I really have I wouldn't take the word hate out of it because I hate that word, but it's like people who are condescending, people who are like egotistic,
Yeah.
people who are like, you know, arrogant. can that person receive therapy?
Yeah. It can also be a trauma response.
Okay.
Right? Like putting people down typically means that you internally feel powerless. It means that in some ways you were put down, right? It means that in some ways maybe you were bullied. Whether that was in school, whether that was in your own home. And that's also something that we sometimes forget to recognize is that, oftentimes a lot of children or a lot of adults were bullied at home. Well, what does that look like? Well, calling your kid stupid or calling them names or, speaking down to them because, well, why couldn't you get a 95 on this test? Like that's so stupid. Like you got it less, like also the way you communicate to your children and the ways that then I'm learning to take care of myself is to go back to school and bully other kids.
Okay.
So I can regain my power. Right.
Yep.
So when you see adults today who are condescending, who speak down to people who are on a power trip, right? It doesn't necessarily often mean that they are narcissistic or they have a personality disorder. It can be just the way that they've learned to survive and protect themselves. So I've worked with people that way, right? Like people who have very high expectations, right? And because they have such high expectations, they come across as, condescending and all of these things. And it's all about communication. It's now learning that, hey, recognize that the reason why you're doing this is because of this. Some people can recognize that. And then, well, how can we now undo that, right? And be a little bit more balanced in the way that you deliver a message.
I was going to say, my follow-up question was going to be, do you think there's an age limit for therapy? But I'm realizing as we're speaking, and it's not. It's up to you to do the work.
It's up to you to do. You can be 75, okay? Wow. And you can then decide, like, you know what? I've been living too much in survival and I want to feel at peace. So let me go to therapy. Let me try it out. You can be 80. I don't care how old you are. There's always a chance to change. Like the word or like that idea of people don't change or people never change, or if you do something, you're going to keep on doing it. That's a choice. Yeah. If the person chooses to continue to do the same things or continue to live on autopilot and not really stay still, right? Then of course they're not going to change. But if they have the willingness and they have that inner power to want to do different or want to be different, they will be different.
You said the word still, and it's like I'm here like looking at my magic toolbox. Like that I picked up recently from therapy that shit is gonna happen, man.
Yep.
Triggers are gonna come. In different forms, in different ways. One thing that my therapist said the other day is those like emotional responses that your body was giving is because your body couldn't take it no more. So your body needs to let it out.
Absolutely.
So you're just gonna have an emotional outburst in the middle of anywhere.
Yep.
And it's and that's just your body because you've been suppressing this and not paying attention to it for so long that your body needs to react
and release it some way,
It's true.
That is so important because, like I was mentioning earlier, our nervous system carries so much of the trauma that we've lived, whether that was through actually like our upbringing or generations to come, right? Like we go back 7 generations, of trauma and it being like passed down from one generation to the next. So it is also so important to be in tune with our nervous system because our body speaks first. It's just that if we're not in tune with it, if we're not in tune with our sensations, with what it feels like in our body, then we won't be able to catch it
and respond accordingly.
When working with my couples, for example, I ask them, hey, like when you guys are in an argument, like how does your body inform you that you're about to blow up?
Right.
Because your body does tell you. Like for me, when I'm getting overwhelmed or I'm getting triggered, like my hands start sweating, I'm moving a knee, my ears feel super red. Right. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have to, move away from this conversation.
Right.
I'm getting flooded. I'm feeling very overwhelmed with so many different emotions. Right. Let's revisit this at a later time. Right. Because whatever's going to come out of my mouth, if I continue speaking, it's not going to be the way that I don't want to become that person.
Have you ever been triggered while listening to someone else's therapy session with you?
Let's see.
I just ask because we're all human.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So, therapists are also going through it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm supposing, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yes, you are a therapist. You you have the tools and everything you need,
Yeah.
but I'm just, you know, might have a bad day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it may trigger you.
Yeah. At this moment, I can say when I first started in the field, like I
Right.
was a baby. I was 19 when I
Okay.
first started.
Okay.
So
Wow.
when I first started, and I was at a substance abuse program, so
Okay.
also a tough population to work with.
Tough.
And I remember getting super triggered once because I was seeing a patient, and then I had another patient coming after that patient, but time ran over because of the client just needed more time, and the patient that was coming after him, he just went out, like he went ballistic. Like he was like, "Well, I scheduled at this time, and why I'm not?" And I remember responding in a reactive way too.
Right.
And I remember my supervisor looked at me and checked me, and she was like, "Yeah, I remember he's a patient." And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I just left, right? And then I later apologized. But that was like a moment of me. Again, I was still young, of course, but that was a moment that was the only moment where I remembered, like I was like, "Oh, okay, this is gonna happen again," because I am the person who he should be modeling,
Right.
And me giving him the same response back, was not appropriate, right? So that's a time. But I also have another time where I got emotional, actually, like teared up in a session with one of my individuals recently, and it was because she's a spiritual person. She's a Christian, all of these things, and I felt like she needed to hear this message. I felt like, okay, like God is telling me to say this, and I'm gonna have to say it.
Right.
But as I was saying it, I choked up. And
Wow.
then,
That's
she
real.
starts crying. I start crying. And I'm like, oh, my God. Oh, no. And then, but again, we're humans, like you said.
Yeah,
and I checked in with her. And I said, well, how do you feel like your therapist? And she was like, what, Kiara? Like, it felt like God was here with us. Like, it felt like you delivered a message that you couldn't not say. And through your tears, like, through you, like it just made me feel even more connected to you.
There you go.
So thank you for showing me that it is okay to cry, even, when you may not want to, So it was more of a connection thing. And, I'm very funny. My sessions are funny because I'm a funny person,
Yeah.
But so we kind of turned it in a humor type of thing and
Right.
laughing type of thing, but it was so healing, and it was a message she needed to hear, and I think that message really supported her also in like changing a perspective.
As long as it did that.
And, yeah.
like you said, that was God.
Yeah.
Because sometimes God has to intervene in the message and purely give the message that was supposed to happen at that moment. And I assure you, she will forever remember that.
Absolutely.
That moment, that clarity, that spiritual discernment that she received in that moment, whatever the message was, she will forever remember that. And that's the beauty of it. And the reason I'm asking about, basically, have you dealt with that is because I'm pretty sure therapists have therapists that they go to, because it's kind of like you're the intake for the grief, for the problems, for all the traumas that people are going through.
Yeah.
There has to be someone that you need to check in with too.
Yeah.
Is that a requirement in the process of becoming a therapist, to make sure that you always have a therapist available?
No, for my program, it was never a requirement for me to have to go to therapy. It was never a requirement. I know that there are some schools that do make it a requirement for you to have to go to therapy. For my program, it wasn't a requirement. I have done therapy, of course, here and there. Like last year, I was involved in a really extreme, intensive coaching program that it was, I don't know why they don't call it therapy, because it was definitely therapy. And it was a whole year of that. And then I do sessions here and there. So I would do like a hypnotherapy session. I like trying things that I don't practice.
Right. Okay.
That's my thing.
Okay.
I like practicing. Because I feel like, and this is a me problem.
Right.
I feel like, I don't know, like, are you going to be as good as me?
Okay.
And that's bad. That's not okay. That's not okay.
Okay.
But I feel like I have high expectations, And because I have high expectations, I rather engage with someone who has a different model that also allows me to kind of open up in a different way.
And learn.
Absolutely. Right. And also, like, it allows me to pick up on things like that I can bring back to my practice, you know?
Right.
I tried a hypnotherapy session, actually, sometime maybe 2 years ago, like maybe
Okay.
2 years ago. And it was so interesting because as she was asking questions, she asked me, oh, like it was something about my vision.
Right.
And I was telling her that, I used to get headaches, when I was a little girl, like often, so much. And then I told her that, that impacted my vision in some way. I don't know. So I was always I also had to wear glasses, but even wearing glasses, like I would still get these migraines. And, then I was walking through again, like how toxic was the home, and, mom and dad arguing, or mom always on hypervigilant and all these things. And then she's like, what would you do when they were, like fighting or arguing? And I said, well, I would like cover my eyes or like cover my ears and tell them to stop,
Right.
And she'd be like, is that, when did your vision start, like when did you start having issues with your vision? And I said, around 9, like around
Wow.
8, 9, maybe 10,
Okay.
like around that age. I think I was in 3rd grade. And she says, okay. And that is the time where you are the most conscientious, right? Like that is
Right.
already when you're learning and when you're picking things up. I was like, yeah, you're right with that. Yep. And she goes, what are your thoughts about maybe the vision? Because the body is protecting you, right? Remember?
Whoa.
So she's like, what are your thoughts about you losing your vision because you no longer wanted to see your parents fight? And I was like,
Oh my God.
OMG. I never thought about it that
Wow.
way. Right? That also in because our bodies, are meant to protect us, we develop illnesses. And this is also like, there's so much research on that, right?
that's
Suppression
crazy.
of emotions because of the emotional wounds. We develop so many different illnesses, immune system issues because of the stress, because of the suppressed emotions. A lot of diabetes is even linked to that, heart diseases, like all of that is linked to us not processing a lot of the emotional wounds that we have.
Right.
So when she said that to me, I was like, oh my goodness, I never saw it that way. But yeah, I can see it. And then I told myself, okay, I'm not going to wear my glasses. And I'm just going to try to see like how I can, like if I'll see better. Like I'm just going to rely on my body healing myself.
Right.
And it started like I was seeing better. And then on my way here, it hits me. And I'm like, oh my God, my vision. I've been complaining for a couple of months now that my vision I'm seeing more blurry now
Right.
than before. And I'm like, why? Like, why? What's going on? And then I remember the conversation I had with her
Wow.
on my way here.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, my parents have been at odds for all of these months, and they are separated now. And I'm like, no wonder. Is my little, like the inner child of me coming back. And I'm like,
Kiara.
oh my goodness. So it hit me when I was on my way here.
Look at
And
that.
so funny that it came up in our conversation today. But it's like our body is always trying to protect us. Our brain is trying to protect us. Our brain is a computer. Our body is a computer. It's a program. And we are pre-programmed to deal with pain or to deal with certain things in a certain in whatever ways our bodies kind of developed, right?
You said it. You was like, your body's is a neurological computer, right?
Yes.
And in defense mechanism, some things will malfunction, when hence
Right.
disease come into play and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It's wow, that's an amazing clarity right there to put 2 and 2 together like that. And that's something from how long ago was that conversation for you?
The hypnotherapy?
Yeah,
That was about 2 years ago.
look at that. It showed up today.
Yep.
It's insane.
Yep.
But your body is always protecting you.
Our
like
body's
you
always
said.
protecting us. So now it's my job to tell my body and remind myself
Right.
that, hey, I'm okay. Like, I'm safe. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Like I can see, I have the skills now and the tools to be able to see whatever comes my way, and I can navigate it, and it's okay. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel like, oh, damn, like I never thought that was going to happen. Like, it's okay to have all these feelings. It's okay to feel like I would have rather them stay in their toxic relationship now because I'm already out here.
Right.
But it's also okay for them to find different ways and different
Yeah.
ways to like live their lives that does not contain this toxicity,
Right.
that could have been killing them too slowly,
Right, right.
So that's where my job comes in, and that's where I become responsible for.
Yeah.
Because now it goes back to not repeating the same things, for our children to really not be the
100.
ones heal from different type of traumas, you know, heal from like me not wanting to like buy you that toy.
There you go.
You know, because
But not that.
yeah, but not those intense ones.
Not that. It's crazy how people get comfortable in toxicity, man.
Yeah.
And that becomes the day-to-day and the norm. And all you could do is, because I have my boundaries at this point. You're going to have to deal with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not in the midst with you dealing with that. You're going to have to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, or you don't figure it out, or you're just comfortable in that toxic environment, what can we do?
Yeah. And it's like also our bodies become familiar with that and crave also the toxicity.
There you go.
You know, so it's also really difficult to break generational trauma because, or even abuse, getting out of an abusive relationship or anything like that. It's just so difficult because our body or nervous system craves it. You know, like I always tell my clients, you know, pay attention to your emotional responses and to your like daily emotions. What are the emotions that you have embodied that are already in your body automatically? That whether that could be joy, that could be, you know, anger, that could be irritation, that could be frustration. What are they? Because once you know what they are, then you know how to be able to rewire those emotions to the ones that you want to now adapt.
And be careful with the emotional responsive triggers because, you know, I know people that unfortunately they're being mistreated, and because that's the only attention that they really get, they confuse it with love. And then it becomes normalized for them. So it's just be mindful of the emotional trigger responses as well.
Yeah. And the fact that you may not be aware yourself, right? Because the thing is that we know what's good and bad, let's say, right? Like I know that getting hit, for example, by my partner is not a good thing, right? I know that, but my body does not. My body actually relates that with safety. You know, that's part of the reason why in some instances you find people like attracting the same type of partners, right? It's because logically I know that, no, I want a partner who's emotionally validating and who can understand me and who can see me, but your body is attracting something else because it's actually vibrating at a different energy.
That's
right?
crazy.
And if you don't identify those behaviors, if you don't identify, okay, well, what is it that I am, how is it that I'm showing up that's making you not validate me? Like, and not making you not validate me, but just for a lack of a better word, right? And also, how am I validating myself? How am I loving myself? How am I taking care of myself? Because again, I say this all the time, we expect a lot of people to show up for us in the ways that we're not showing up for ourselves. And if I'm not showing up for myself with care, love, you know, boundaries too with my own self, it's going to be really hard for me to set those things with other people. 100%. People are going to treat you as best as you treat yourself. You know, like I from early on, I knew, okay, I don't take shit from anybody. That's it. Like
point
blank, period.
Boundaries up.
You know, but you have to be decisive of that. And you also have to understand who you are as a person. Right? And who you want to become, because that's another thing. People feel like I am who I am. And trust me, I was one of those. Like, well, this is who I am. No, that's whack. Like, what do you mean this is who you are? No.
Continue growing. Continue learning. You know, I'm sorry. I'm going to keep you here for a bit longer because this conversation is dope. This conversation is dope.
I'm having fun with you.
I do have a couple of more questions. And one of the main questions that I was thinking about is, so, you know, my therapist is a different ethnicity as me, right? Do you believe that for a Latino, it's best for a Latino to see a Latino or Latina therapist because of the cultural difference? Because it's strange. I connected with my therapist, but I'm very like in tune with all cultures. So yes, I'm Hispanic, Latino, Dominican, all that stuff. But I'm if I connect with you and you're from a different ethnicity, I'm cool with that. But because of the cultural upbringings and the different, like, you know, dynamics, and, you know, do you see that being more? What's the word I'm looking for? More effective in a way.
You know, that's a great question. I think that the most effective therapy is when you just like your therapist, no matter where she's from. At the same time, I also do understand that there could be a cultural difference, right? In the ways that you may feel validated or in the ways that you may feel like that therapist understands you as a person.
Right.
I think that I can work with anybody as long as you tell me your story.
Yeah.
You know, it does not matter where you're from. As long as you tell me your story and your cultural background and the cultural like it's my job then as the therapist to learn that culture more.
Right.
To if I'm deciding to work with someone with a culture that has a different religion or it's my job to now to do my research to understand that background better.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I think that at the end of the day, like if the client, you know, clicks
Right.
with you, and you ask the client, you see effectiveness of the work that you're doing, and
Right.
you're feeling understood by this therapist, you're feeling seen and heard.
Right.
Then you know it does not matter. It does not matter the race. I do have a lot of not a lot of people, but I do hear oftentimes, you know, women in particular saying, "Well, I want a black therapist because you know they'll understand me better," or "I want a therapist who's my same skin color because they will understand the troubles that I've faced."
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's not necessary. Like, I mean, meaning like
Not necessarily true.
Right.
Right.
Like, I could you could have the same skin tone as me, but we didn't go through the same experience because I had a different mindset about it.
Right.
Right. So that doesn't mean just because a person is black or is from a certain culture does not mean that you would just feel understood by this person because we
Right.
don't necessarily had the same, you know, growing up experience.
And you know, just to dive in a little bit deeper, because the reason I'm asking is because we are Latino, and in a Latino household, it's very like Latino. It's like our culture and our beliefs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, our generation is shifting it a bit
Yeah.
into a more like open to all cultures type of
Yes.
thing. But picture my dad going to another culture or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Like it'll be weird for him.
Yeah.
For me, it's different, of
Right.
course. But you know, I from a Latino perspective, it was just a question that I had.
Yeah, and one thing that I will add is that it is also nice to see someone from your same culture doing something different.
That's it. Yeah.
Right. So also, and it's important for us to check in with us. Like, okay, what am I looking for, and how do I want those sessions to look like? You know, and the personality also that I want
Has to click.
in this therapist.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can have people from different culture have like our same, you know, vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
100%.
And feel connected through that. And at the same time is again like seeing someone when we see someone who looks like us doing positive things and doing great, we can see ourselves being able to actually be able to do that too. So our brain is able to actually process it a little better
Right.
and easier because now I'm seeing other people who look like me do it as well. Right.
Okay.
That's the only difference that I would say when it comes to like the therapeutic cultural difference
Right,
is
right.
that perhaps you want to become a therapist or you've you know, you maybe thought about it or you
Right.
thought about becoming a life coach or whatever that may be for you, right?
Right. Right.
Then seeing someone who looks like you doing it
Yeah.
would actually like motivate you even more
Yeah.
and allow your brain to see like, oh wait, this is actually possible. I can do that too.
You know, it depends on how you see it.
Yeah.
It depends on how you see it. So you're a mom, right?
Yes.
Has your family taken advantage of you being a therapist?
Absolutely.
From being a mom, a wife, a daughter?
Absolutely.
Do you try to guide everyone in the family? Does it get exhausting? Is it tiring? Because
Yeah.
you know, you're working, let's say a 9 to 5, but then you got to go home and deal with everybody's trauma. And then it's like your
Yeah.
cousins, and they know that you're a therapist, so
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, Kiara, I need some help in this area or that area."
You know,
It happens.
I think that my family, that's a great question. I think that some of them do. Some of them do. They do rely, or they would contact me, or they'll ask a question, or they'll say like, "Hey, like, how should I like handle this?" Or maybe it's a question about their kid, or you know, like it does come here and there, but it's not. It's nothing too much. Like
Okay.
it's not intense, you know. And I also think that it's because of my personality. Like they
Yeah.
know that if you come. Yeah, like, and also, like, if you come ask me a question, I'm actually going to make you think. I'm not going to give you an answer,
There you go.
you know? So, like, I'm actually going to right back at you. So, okay, so help me understand how you would like to manage that
A
situation.
true therapist at work.
Like, it's in me. Like, it's
Yeah.
within me. And so, like, my family don't really, do that. And I think it's because of my personality, my boundaries. They know. And at the same time, I feel bad because I don't also want them to feel like they can never reach out to me, because y'all can always reach out to me. I love hearing problems and helping y'all out. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's what I tell my I tell my kids, but my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, my siblings, like, you can always reach out. Like, never feel like you cannot, because even if I don't pick up, because I do have my phone always on D&D, but trust me and believe me, when I can, I will get back to you, because the last thing that I want to feel is you didn't contact me because you thought that I was busy.
Right.
No, don't do that. I am busy, but still contact me.
Yeah. We'll get to you. But
yes.
I definitely will get to you. You are the CEO and founder of New You Psychotherapy. Yes. Talk to me about that journey, when it began, and what's the full purpose behind it? Yeah,
thank you. So, oh man, so 2021, June 19th of 2021, I quit my 9 to 5 to do private therapy only. At that time, I was working with somebody else who introduced me to her private practice. At that time, COVID hit. I've been telling my husband, like, I want to do therapy. Like, I want to do private therapy. Like, I want to not in like community based, because that's what I've been doing my whole life.
Your whole life.
I want to do something different, and I want to do like that one-on-one therapy type of thing. And he's like, okay, like, if you want to do that, you're gonna do it. So so then I thought about this coworker of mine who I worked with at the substance abuse program when I was 19, and I reached out to her and I said, hey, like, do you know of anyone who's looking for to hire a therapist, blah blah blah. And she's like, oh, I'm actually looking for someone. So it's like, perfect. When's the interview? Yeah. So I had a call with her. I went on, I believe, again, I think that was in 2020 when I joined her practice. So as I was building my caseload, I noticed, like, oh, wait a minute, I really like this, and I can do this, and I can do this from home. And so I was thinking of all of those things, but I was also thinking about how stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out I was because of my 9 to 5 job. Even though I was, because of, COVID, we were working from home and all of these things.
100%.
That was the worst for me, because I had 2 kids with school.
Yep.
Right. So my husband and I were just, we lost the most weight because we were just going up and down the stairs with these kids, up and down the stairs, and me, like, sessions and all of these things. So anyway, I decided, I was like, okay, you know what? If I pass my licensing exam, I'm going to consider quitting my 9 to 5 and just do, therapy full time. And what happened? So I took my exam in April. I passed it. I came back into the 9 to 5, and I gave in my resignation letter for it to be that June 19th. And then my sole goal was always to just, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do my own private practice, because I love the idea of be doing whatever I want, Yeah. And granted, that practice was amazing. I always thank her. Shout out to Vanessa, like, amazing woman. Like, she gave me the opportunity, and she's also a white woman.
Yeah.
Who gave me that opportunity, And I say that to say, because sometimes our own culture sometimes don't be looking out for us.
100%.
And that sucks. And it's not cool.
It's not.
And I'm always looking out for my people. I'm always, like, helping people do better. Like, I have one of my clinicians right now, like, she opened her own private practice, and still with me at KYP, because of the way that we treat people, because of the way that we help people, because of the way that I elevate people. Like, right. I want you to go after everything. Go for your fullest potential in the best way that you can. So I know this became a long ass answer.
No. The reason is because you said it, like, information is not to be kept, right? Like, a lot of our culture is like that. And little do you know that person helping you is for you to help out someone else.
Absolutely.
In the future. Like, I always say in this podcast, and I believe I've said it in the last 4 podcasts, I don't care. Like, these podcasts, these conversations that I'm having are so eye-opening to me, and I'm so like driven to have these conversations, because I know somebody's gonna listen to it and is gonna get something out of it. That's why I wanted to speak to a therapist in the actual podcast, and especially a Latin one. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this book, right, Becoming a New You, right? Talk to me about it. Was it after you became the CEO and founder that you said, you know what, I'm gonna write a book and we're gonna publish it.
Yeah, it came like almost like together.
Okay.
So New Psychotherapy, I know you asked like what's the mission behind it. It's really behind, so it's really the foundation work that we do is like helping individuals and couples really heal their childhood wounds and really understand how they show up today in their relationships, not only with other people but also with themselves. So it's kind of what goes across, right? With the work that we do with individuals and also with couples, and of course other things go into that. The book, it almost, now that I think back about it, I'm like, it became almost like the blueprint of the work that I do with my couples and my clients, right? So I work with females, I work with male, but I also work with couples. So I wanted this book to speak to that population. I remember that I had hired a coach to help me write with the book process and all of these things. And I remember her telling me like, okay, Kiara, who's your ideal client? And I'm like, everybody. And she's like, no, Kiara, that's not how it works. Like, you're speaking specifically to somebody. Who are you speaking to? And I'm like, well, I'm speaking to women, I'm speaking to men, and I'm also speaking to couples. So she's like, oh my God, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, you know what? What I want to do, what I feel like I'm most in alignment with is obviously speaking to my people, but also speaking to anyone who has childhood wounds. Anyone who has childhood wounds. And honestly, we all do. Whether we accept it or not, we all do. So I said to her, okay, so how about we do this? How about we put it in sections? And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, how about I write 4 chapters for women, about some of the maladaptive behaviors that I see show up the most, 4 for men, and then 4 for couples.
Amazing.
And she was like, oh my God, I don't think there's anything out there like that. And I was like, all right, well, there will be now. So that's how that came about. And I gave it the name Becoming a New You. Well, new with a K, because that's also the practice, but also because you knew yourself before you came here.
There you go.
You've always known who you are. My job is just to kind of help you unravel all of those layers that have covered up yourself. But you still are who you are. You still love, your empathy, your compassion, your understanding, your all of the amazing things that you were born with. It's just that trauma happened. Things happen in your life that you had to kind of navigate. And the best way that we know how to navigate is to mold ourselves into whatever that environment needs, right? So if I'm in an environment where, again, I'll use my example, where I'm shut down every time that I'm being emotional or I'm showing any emotion, well, then I'm learning that expressing emotion is not safe. So I'm going to mold myself in a way to now protect those emotions by not sharing them, right? So now as I got older, though, I'm having real life complications in my relationships with people because I'm very harsh, right? I'm very angry. And now I'm also exploding on people, from one minute to the next. Yeah. And now I'm also not able to actually use emotional words because I don't have it. I don't know what to tell you. When you ask me how you feel, I don't know how I feel, actually. I don't know emotionally how I feel. So all of these maladaptive behaviors are, start in our childhood, and they develop who we are, and oftentimes trauma also becomes a personality.
Wow. Yeah.
And that is why it is also difficult sometimes to kind of like determine, wait, is it trauma or is it a personality disorder?
Or is this reality?
Yeah. Like borderline personality disorder, for example, that's one of the diagnoses that is very rooted in abandonment. And because I felt abandoned growing up, which you can also feel even if you live with 2 parents, even if no one left the home, meaning like you can still feel that emotional abandonment. Wow. That one, it's so rooted in you protecting yourself and not feeling abandoned that it becomes your personality. Wow. It becomes who you are. You may show up as very needy to other people, as, almost like a stalker sometimes to other people, right? Because you're just so afraid of losing this person. Wow. Or you may explode on people, right? Because you're afraid that they're walking out and you don't want them to walk out, so you don't know what to do. So it's just a lot of our trauma becomes our personality, and it's so important to like detect, like, okay, is it a borderline personality disorder, or is it just the trauma that became borderline? And now if I learn to unravel it, then I can kind of go back to who I know I was.
I go back to the toolbox, man. As we're speaking, right, and as the conversation is going, it's like I'm getting triggered in certain points because certain things are realistic for me as well. but not triggered in a bad way.
Yeah.
Because I have all the tools to kind of like combat them. And when I told you earlier that me and my wife would have conversations early on in our relationship where she said, "Hey, you're showing up as your dad." Now is that I'm realizing I showed up as my dad because that worked for him in the moment that he did that.
Oof. Yes.
But just having like the understanding now that that's what it was allows me not to become that version again.
Yes.
So that's what therapy does for me.
Yes.
Like it allows me to see what the moment is or what it was and understand what was happening back then that I thought was a normal reaction because of the reaction my parent received versus the reaction that I should be getting or how I should be implementing the different tools to react differently in that situation.
Yeah.
So, and it's a learning progress.
It's a learning process. And you don't know what you don't know, but also you cannot control what you don't know and you cannot change what you don't know. Exactly. Right? Yeah. So that's also another thing. It's like you have to be aware of you. Yeah. You have to know you, because if I know myself, then I know how to control myself. If I know the thoughts that I'm having, if I know my emotions, if I know my emotional responses and my triggers, then I can control them. If I don't know them, then they're controlling me.
100%.
You know? So that is so important. And just a little bit about the nervous system I want to share, because it's so important for us to be aware also of all of the tools that we just have with ourselves. Like breath work is one of the most amazing tools that we can, you know, implement into our daily life. And it doesn't take that long. You could do 5 minutes of it. Yeah. You know? There's research that neuroscientists have taken out that kind of tells us that we need like 300 to 400 repetition of any restorative, any system restorative practice for our body to begin to actually shift their memory.
Wow.
Right? So that means that if I take 5 minutes every day, like how many days are in a year? 365.
365.
If I take...
Put 1,500 hours.
Right. Like every day, if I take 5 minutes to just do breath work, I'm now like allowing myself to start feeling that peace and internal calm.
There you go.
Calmness that is going to now develop new neural pathways in my brain, right? That now is going to start embodying my body. So once I do that, it's almost like compound interest.
Yeah.
You know, like the more I do these things, the better I feel, the better I get. And I love that you said earlier that when you go to therapy, it's not like instantaneous, you know? No, like remember that it took all of these years for you to live with these emotional wounds and untold stories, you know, and narratives. So it's going to also take some time for you to undo those things, you know? So it's so important for patience, so important for grace and compassion, and so important for you to be in tune with who you are, because once you're in tune with who you are, the world is your oyster. You can do whatever fuck you want.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just like you, I call it like fall in love with the new process of you. And fall in love with what you're becoming, you know, as you're learning yourself or relearning yourself. Always, you know, I always tell my daughters this, every day is a reset. You know, it's a reset. Yesterday was yesterday. Let's shift what we can for today. Absolutely. Slowly. And it'll become better in the future. Last question for you.
Yes.
And I appreciate this conversation. Absolutely. So amazing. And I, you know, it's weird because I've always ended conversations just asking, you know, if you see a younger version of yourself, or, you know, what if someone wants to become a therapist and they're Latina? No, I'm going to shift it on you. I'm going to shift it on you. What do you still have to tell the younger version of yourself today?
Oof. What do I still have to tell her? Let's see. Okay, let me think. I want to be intentional about it. What do I still have to tell the little version of me?
Little Kiara.
Little Kiara.
Going through life.
Yes.
What do you still find yourself having to tell yourself, the younger version of you?
Yeah. I think that we did it. That we broke the generational trauma or the cycle when it comes to my relationship. You know, my relationship with my husband. Knowing that I did what I said I was going to do. You know, like, I don't think that I tell her enough, because I remember, well, my heart's racing because this is becoming a thing right now, okay? I remember, like, always telling myself, like, wow, like, I want a good man. Like, I want someone who's going to care for me and and love me for who I am, and but also be faithful and honest and transparent, and just to want to do life with me forever.
Yeah.
You know, I really wanted that. I wanted that so much. And every time my parents would have like these big arguments, I remember telling myself like, oh my God, I cannot be in that. I cannot repeat that. I cannot have my children live like that, you know? And I don't think I remind her or I tell her that we did it, that we attracted someone who respects us, who's a great father, who is a great lover, who prioritizes family, who values family so much. And that we're a great mom, you know? I think that I also don't give her enough credit for being such an amazing mom and for becoming so empathetic and so compassionate, something that was really far away from me. Like, I was not as empathetic. Like, if people would have met me when I was 14, I think I was empathetic, but it was just really hard for me to, like, go there because I was always hurt every time I tried to be empathetic or be understanding. So that's what I would tell her, is that she's going to celebrate her 10-year anniversary, wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that she's been with this man, you know, since early. She wanted to get married early. Well, you did that. You wanted to have children early. Well, you did that, you know. You knew you wanted to have a business. You did that. Like, you've done so many things that you told yourself at 7, at 9, at 8 that you were going to do. And I couldn't be prouder of her because she really set me up. So thank you to little Kiara for dreaming, for always hoping, for always keeping her faith, and for believing that things were going to be different for her.
Wow. Listen, we're going to end it in that note. We're getting emotional here. Wow. Thank you, Kiara. Listen, it was a great conversation. It's a pleasure to have you here. This conversation will change someone's life. It's internally changing my life too, because I'm seeing things in a different light as well. I'm just thankful to have you here. Thank you so much. I know we met today. The energy was right. I couldn't be more thankful to have you here on my podcast. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for opening up.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And I'm sorry for getting you emotional.
No, thank you. I am an emotional being. I'm a crier.
Listen, I'm a crier too. Okay, I'm a crier too. I listen. It's been a while. It's been a while that I've been crying for like since therapy. It's like I've become this faucet.
Yeah, same. Those are the tears we never exactly. got the opportunity to shed. So,
but thank you for being here. Thank you. I appreciate you. Absolutely. To all the listeners, listen. Before I do that, Kiara, look at the camera. Tell the listeners where they can find you.
Yes, well, you can find me kiaraluna.com, also newyoupsychotherapy.com. I'm on Instagram, Mrs. Kiara Luna, also on LinkedIn, same name. So yeah, you can find me there.
Thank you so much to all the listeners, YouTubers, TikTokers, Instagrammers, all of you guys. I love you. We'll see you guys. Peace.